when was the last time you've been around like I have? And this is one thing I've been talking about. I think I mentioned this to Bob. When was the last time any of us have seen a CEO act the way Elon Musk does? Now, take away his brilliance. All right, he might be, the most brilliant man in the world, but just a couple things he did. It just strikes me as like that is not normal behavior, and you got to discount the stock based on that. Remember when the short sellers were circling in 2018? He just blurts out on social media, on Twitter before he owned it, before he turned it to X. Hey, I got a deal for $420.
Right.
Taking it private. Massive premium.
Funding secured.
Funding secured. Massive premium. Okay, deal never happens. Now that to me is
well, like, funding wasn't secured.
Yeah, right. It just to me that's just a level of you just don't do that. And if you're the board, you got to like almost fire the CEO. I don't care who it is. You just don't say that. That's not the way it works. Particularly if it's not secured. Particularly if it's he later came out and said, remember the SEC under Trump charged him. There was some consent decree that they worked out. He later came out and said he did have a deal or he had people snooping around. I mean, no one knows if that's true. I mean, there's never been much, but in any event, I'm just giving what he said. But just any event, if you're the board of Tesla, you got to be like, what is that? Okay, we're an investor.
Well,
now he did. Then he did, in his defense, bring the company back. He fixed the management issues, the production issues. Remember, they had massive production issues. The company starts to do better, obviously, from an operational standpoint. Not saying it's doing 165 times, price earnings ratio thing, like it's so overvalued. It's insane. I'm not saying it's doing that well based on the metrics, but better, profitable now. And then he did something with Tesla that with Twitter that was insane. So he goes in and he says, "Oh, I want to buy Twitter." He didn't even read the balance sheet. I don't know if he reads balance sheets. But he says, here's my last and final offer, $44 billion. And then they don't want to sell to him, the old management. They're told by, I think it was JP Morgan. I could be wrong about this. I just remember I've reported this out. Like, the old Twitter manager, like, if you don't take this bid, you're never getting anything near this because this thing is not worth $44 billion. It's worth closer to $4 billion. And so they hit it, signed the paperwork, and then he tries to get out of it, which to me is, again, crazy.
Yeah,
who does that?
But
now,
but Charlie, one of the things, Bill, reading Power Failure, that really struck me, I had not thought about it until I reread some of the book this weekend. Is GE Financial, the use of the AAA rating to raise cheap funding and deploy it in other forms of financial investments and use that as earnings, and as Charlie referenced earlier in the show, you would handle that so well with Jack Welch about managing earnings. And it struck me, I was like, Musk actually used Twitter in very much the same way. So popular opinion in today's world is really equivalent to a AAA rating. And he used that cudgel in a way that was super inventive to give himself social capital so that he could actually get the premium. He wasn't able to tap the capital markets, maybe, with funding secured, but the stock price went up a gazillion %. So he used that in a way that he understood the public opinion was a credit rating of sorts, and he bought it.
And now he bought it, but
now he owns it. So I thought that was it didn't strike me until I read it again, that may be what he was up to.
I mean, but it's a double-edged sword too, because yes, he has 200 million followers on Twitter. I mean, can you imagine having an army of 200 million people? I mean, it's incredible. So, I mean, obviously he's got a very powerful voice. Even if you mute him, like I've muted him, I can't take it anymore. But you still get it one way or the other because he feeds it to you somehow, or his followers feed it to you. But now, of course, his shenanigans. I mean, now he's kind of walking it back, obviously, but is picking a fight with Trump and
But
shenanigans.
by the way, let's unpack that fight a bit. It's not that he talked about the budget. I mean, no one gives a shit about that. The budget is the budget. You can have an opinion. He literally said the president of the United States had some nefarious connection with one of the all-time most horrible people who killed himself in his jail cell, which is Jeffrey Epstein. Now think about that. Unless you have the document in your hand, you could say that they once palled around in Palm Beach. But if you're saying,
well, there's pictures clearly of
right,
them doing that.
Of course, we could say that. But if you're saying that he's in the Epstein files in a nefarious way,
I don't even know what that means, being in the Epstein files. A lot of people are in the Epstein files.
Yeah, I mean, half of my sources, and I should say that half, but I know so many people that knew Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't be surprised if I read their name in some email or something. But that's not my point. That's not what he was saying. He was saying he was implying something far more nefarious, almost slanderous, libelous, don't you think? I mean, like, what CEO does that?
Well, I mean, I think he's a sui generis individual. What CEO is CEO of 6 companies at the same time? And sophisticated companies, SpaceX, Starlink, Neuralink, the Boring Company, Tesla, Twitter. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. And what person, what individual? I don't think in the history of the world there's ever been an individual who can put up 24 billion of equity, which basically was lost, in the early years of the Twitter deal, and only because of AI and merging it and the AI valuation that he got.
And who knows if it's real too?
Who knows if it's real? Who knows if any of that AI valuation is real? But it's he got the debt to move off the balance sheets to the banks, which was a disaster for a long time. So he seems to have somehow resurrected it. In fact, because he's the richest guy in the world, is able to do that. But what individual? I mean, think about it, Charlie. It's like incredible. I still think about it. I want to buy this thing. I'm going to buy it for 44 billion. Then I want to get out of it. Then I'm forced to go through with it, which of course is the right decision. Then I put up 24 billion, and it's like, yeah, okay, who cares?
By the way, he has a fiduciary responsibility, at least to the public shareholders, right? A legal fiduciary responsibility to Tesla. And then he took a sabbatical and went to work for Trump. That to me is just.
I mean, he's got a fiduciary responsibility to 6 companies,
but his public shareholders is Tesla. I mean, yes, I get that.
Right. But I mean, SpaceX has a lot of shareholders too. Twitter, as we know, has a lot of shareholders.
But once you go public, it's
totally. But
the bar's higher.
But
anyway, we have to. I'm getting the hook here. I know Bob had one question that he wanted to ask me and you. Go for it, Bob.
So, in my travels in the last, I'd say, month, and it's funny, I had not heard it before then, but obviously we're doing this show and it's getting a lot of views on Charlie's X account and mine. A lot of people have said that basically, Charlie, your interviews in front of Lehman Brothers, and Bill, your book, Postmortem, and also the reporting you did during the fall of Bear Stearns caused these firms to go out of business. And, this is not some junior varsity person. These are senior folks, have senior positions. And I almost had to do my eyes were starting to blink. And I looked at these folks and I just said, have we learned nothing? And I just loved your reaction to both of you, because you both were central to the reporting at the time. And here we are 17 years on from the financial crisis, and that bubbles up. And I was floored by it, but I love your reaction.
I could tell you, I did a lot of reporting on Bear. I mean, I basically reported that they were being bought by JP. I broke the story sheet. They were being bought. They were done and being bought by JP Morgan. And then I broke a lot of stories before that. In the year before that, trust me, Jimmy Kane and I had many who I actually really liked. Jimmy's recently deceased. But we had some very nasty conversations. And I actually had a lot of nasty, I was threatened physically, believe it or not, by angry people at Bear Stearns after that. I was threatened physically by angry people at Lehman Brothers. after I did all that reporting on Lehman. I broke the story that Lehman was going to go under. I was at CNBC at the time. Here's how I handled both things. Number one, I would say your problem begins and ends with your risk managers. I didn't go into leverage 50,000 times to one. Number one, and if you touch me, I will break your fucking skull. And I said that more than once.
I wouldn't mess with Charlie. That's for sure. Look,
and I was a lot tougher back then. Trust me.
When it comes, I mean, that's obviously it's absurd in my case. My first appearance in Jimmy Cain's office was March 16th of 2008. So I was a historian. I was like, okay, there's a dead body on the floor. I want to know how it got there. So, and that's what my book, House of Cards, is all about, is how it got there. And the answer is, of course, they were borrowing short and lending long, which is why banks go out of business for millennia. They were forced because of their hedge funds going out of business in 2007 out of the long-term debt market, and they were forced into the overnight repo market. They were giving their creditors a vote every night on whether to keep doing business with them, and they voted no on the week of March, ending in March 15th, and that's all there is to it.
And that's true for every bank. I mean, I wrote a book about
every bank.
Every single bank borrowed long, borrowed short,
and including GE Capital. And my new book, which is about Apollo, which is coming out next year, is places like Apollo are the first. This is a book about how is that dynamic changing? Have they changed up that horrible dynamic of borrowing short and lending long? I mean, Apollo claims to be borrowing long and lending long, and is that going to change Wall Street forever? That's what I try to answer in my book.